Tyrants, Tormentors, and the Tiara, Chapter 5. When Sylvia regained consciousness, she thought someone had burned out her eyes. After feeling her face, she concluded the darkness was so overwhelming her enhanced senses couldn't detect any light. Cold iron manacles, attached to a slab in the floor, gripped her arms and legs. The chains were short and provided little room for mobility. "Svoboda," Sylvia said, tapping the shackles. To her surprise, the spell failed to unlock her bindings. Her magic didn't even rise to her command. She hesitated. "Osvashat!" She tried again, placing her hands together and swinging them apart. Her summons produced no energy. Wherever she was, a barrier surrounded the room, blocking all magic. Sylvia was unaware of any power capable of completely negating magical energy. She knew about power sinks, creatures with strong magical resistances, and even rare humans born with a complete immunity to spells. But a force capable of preventing a spellcaster from summoning their energy was something foreign to her. Defeated in her attempt to cast spells, she considered her predicament. The outlook wasn't good. She found herself in an unknown place, deprived of power, and kidnapped by a mythical creature. Sylvia had never paid much attention in history classes. Though the Demon War remained the most pivotal event in the history of mankind, she could recall very few facts about it. The only thing she knew for certain was that the demon targeted the tiara. How it knew about the tiara, she couldn't guess. It, or whoever was controlling it, also knew about the self-spells protecting the crown. Otherwise, she would be dead. Eventually, someone would come to convince her to relinquish the prize. In answer to her thoughts, she heard the distant noise of keys jingling, followed by the scrape of wood dragging against stone. Torchlight appeared in the distance, revealing a long set of stairs to her left, leading upward through a stone archway. She waited as the torchlight grew brighter and her visitors grew closer. 3 figures passed through the archway. The foremost was a man wrapped in a hooded white cloak. A man and woman followed behind, flanking him. They wore thick armor with short swords sheathed to their tunics. They held torches in their hands and appeared to be guards. Both bore symbols on their breastplates, consisting of swirling crescents and a clawed hand. The torchlight filled the dungeon, and Sylvia surveyed her surroundings. She sat in the middle of a large cell with thick metal bars. She couldn't see the bars in the dark, and the chains prevented her from touching them. There were 5 more cells of relatively equal size. All lay empty. She occupied the last cell on the right side. The cloaked man approached Sylvia's cell. His hooded forehead almost brushed with the 7-foot-high ceiling as he walked. He placed a torch in an iron rack affixed to the wall and stood looking down at her. She gazed back at him, unafraid and unwavering. Beneath the darkness of the hood, she saw him smile. Long, pale fingers emerged from the robe and lowered the hood to reveal her captor's face. He was young, either in his upper teens or early 20s, with long black hair. His skin was unnaturally pale, with an almost greenish hue. His thin limbs and face gave the impression of severe emaciation. He appeared frail and sickly. Only his eyes revealed the truth behind the otherwise fragile facade. His deep-set sockets glowed a dark crimson, piercing the darkness of the dungeon like tiny candles. They were the eyes of a demon. "Jason, Amanda, leave me." He possessed a strong, authoritative voice. The guards bowed. Backing up several paces, they proceeded up the stairs. The man waited until they were gone before speaking. "Welcome, Queen Sylvia, to Janloris Keep." Sylvia's mind raced. She'd heard the name Janloris Keep before. She had not heard it in school, but it sounded familiar. How did she know it? The man stared at her, apparently waiting for her to say something. "Who are you?" Sylvia said at last. "My name is Cyril Genloris. I'm the last living descendant of the Genloris family and the ruler of this keep." "What are you?" she asked, her attention riveted by his glowing eyes, which randomly flared and faded. "I'm a Kefling. I'm the first such creature born in a millennium. A Kefling is a child conceived of two parents performing an ancient demonic ritual. I'm part demon from the blood ingested during the ceremony. I'm part human from my human parents. And I'm part magic, for I'm composed of the spells performed during conception. Are you confused yet?" he added with a chuckle. "I know I am." He leaned against the bars of the cell opposite her. "I know you're after the tiara," she said. "You can't have it." "I'm not surprised by your defiance. You've been through a lot since last night. I'm sorry you must endure this nightmare, but we're both pawns in a much bigger game than you realize. Stubbornness won't serve you well." "Perhaps you'd care to explain this game to me?" Sylvia said, annoyed by his casual manner. "I assumed you'd already surmised the answers. Did a demon not snatch you from your room last night? Do you not know what that means?" "It means you're an evil and arrogant man with great resources. It means you want my tiara and will stop at nothing to get it." Cyril gave a mirthless laugh. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not the villain in this story. There are many villains in this story. I'm not one of them. You, on the other hand, are." "What?" Sylvia exclaimed. "Darlith, the demon lord, has risen from his slumber. 10 of the greatest wizards to ever live sacrificed their lives to imprison him. Now, because of people like you, he has been allowed to return." He no longer leaned on the prison bars, but paced between the cells. His fiery eyes and voice grew fiercer with each step. "For a millennia, I and my people protected you. We sacrificed our freedom and ambitions to ensure your safety. You and your people sat around in lavish homes, interested in nothing but gain and glory. Political leaders and nobility claim to care about their people. In truth, your only motivation, and the motivation of those beneath you, is furthering your own interests. You and your ancestors enjoyed the freedom and safety we provided, yet when we needed help and called for assistance, your people ignored us. We couldn't give you wealth and power, so you turned your backs on us. My own parents, driven to despair, released the demon lord in the vain hope of freedom and reprieve." Sylvia said nothing as her captor continued his rant. "You are the villains, all of you. But you don't have to be a villain anymore. You have the chance at redemption. You have a chance to correct the errors of your negligent ancestors. You have a chance to give me the tiara." "A lot of hollow words," she said. "Perhaps you'd care to explain what part my tiara plays in this fascinating story?" "The demon lord wants it. Mankind is only a shadow of their former glory, and there may be no sorcerer capable of standing up to him. Still, he remembers his previous defeat. He won't take the risk of losing again. With the crown, no one can stand against him." "And I'm supposed to become a hero by giving him the crown?" "No, you're supposed to become a hero by giving the crown to me." "How are the two different?" "Because I can slay the demon lord." "Great," Sylvie answered. "Then do so. Why do you need the tiara?" "Because I cannot kill him without it," he said, clearly getting annoyed by her flippant attitude. "I'm a Kefling. I'm part demon. I have the strengths of a demon, but I also have their weaknesses. One of those weaknesses is the inability to defy the orders of the demon lord. I must obey whatever he tells me to do." "Then how does the crown help you?" "Because I'm also part man. I have the strengths of a human, including the ability to wield magic. With the crown, my powers will be sufficient to resist his will and topple his throne." "Why would you do that? I thought I and my people were villains, monsters who set the demon lord free. Now you want to save us?" "No," he said, his voice growing menacing. "I want to rule you." "So you'd become the new demon lord, taking his place upon the throne?" "Does it surprise you to hear me say so? I feel no need to lie. Demons feed off human blood. The demon lord will turn mankind into cattle to satisfy his hungry hordes. Humanity would be better off under me. At least I'm a man." "Only half of one. You're also half demon and, from what I can tell, all monster." Sylvia rose from the floor to face him. "One dictator is the same as another. I sacrificed everything to stop tyranny. I've spent my life opposing tyrants. I'm not going to throw away everything by creating a new one." Cyril shrugged. "I understand you're upset. You've heard many things and need time to digest them. Perhaps after thinking over my words, you'll see reason." Cyril withdrew the torch from the iron fastening. In a blur of movement, he flashed from the front of her cell to the archway at the bottom of the stairs. Sylvia couldn't imagine how anyone or anything could move so fast. In another blur, he vanished up the stairs, the torchlight fading with him. Like the jaws of a massive monster, the blackness swallowed her solitary form, engulfing her within a sea of endless darkness. "I've given you a chance to escape torture and save the world," Cyril's voice boomed. "I'll give you another. Reconsider my offer. A time is coming when you'll wish you had." Sylvia heard a door slam and a key turn. Silence followed. She again found herself imprisoned within an icy world of endless nothingness. She sat alone, with no company save her thoughts. She heard her stomach rumble with hunger. She wondered if someone would bring her food and water. If the goal of imprisonment was to force her to cede the tiara, they might choose to starve her. Even if they brought refreshment, the food and drink might be laced with a drug. She couldn't risk eating or drinking anything they provided. She considered her chances of rescue. Her people would search for her, but she doubted anyone at the palace knew of Junlora's keep. She wondered if anyone had seen the demon. She didn't know how it kidnapped her. She went unconscious after hitting the wall. There was a chance someone spotted the fiend as it escaped. If so, a history teacher at the academy might be able to connect demons with Junlora's keep. On the other hand, the dark-skinned demon kidnapped her in the middle of the night. It entered her room without being seen. It might have exited the same way. Even if it took to the skies, the night was overcast. The demon might blend into the clouds, escaping unnoticed. Even if the creature was seen, and one of the professors happened to know about the keep, would they really have reason to look for her there? Sylvia didn't know how far away Junlora's keep was from Roria. The demon possessed wings. If it could fly, it could cover ground swifter than someone on foot. The distance between Roria and Junlora's keep could require weeks of travel for an ordinary person. Altogether, the chances of rescue seemed slim. She thought about the tiara. She didn't know much about the demon lord. If 10 wizards gave up their lives to imprison him, he must be incredibly powerful and evil. Perhaps he could force her into surrendering the crown. Without hope of escape or rescue, the choice came down to either giving the tiara to Cyril or the demon lord. She didn't like either option. Cyril could be lying to her. He seemed passionate when he spoke, but he could be a talented actor. He might hand the tiara to the demon lord. Even if he didn't, he seemed incredibly arrogant. He might not be powerful enough to defeat the demon lord even with the tiara. He might be lying about the demon lord. She possessed no way to verify or refute his claim. Cyril himself might be the demon lord for all she knew. If the demon lord wanted her crown, why not confront her directly? Ultimately, Sylvia knew she could never willingly hand over the tiara. As she told Cyril, she had lost everything in her battle to free Arba. True, she gained the kingdom and great glory, but she never wanted those things. She wanted to be free and see her people free. In doing so, she lost more than she could ever regain. She gave her people the gift of independence and would endure any suffering to ensure they kept it. Sylvia tested the chains. There was sufficient slack to permit her to assume a fetal position. It wasn't comfortable, but at least she could pass some time lost in sleep. Sylvia closed her eyes. Her dreams wouldn't be pleasant. They rarely were, but she suspected tonight's dreams would be particularly horrid. Maybe when she awoke, her mind would be sharper, and she could decide the best way to solve her dilemma. With no light or sound to disturb her, Sylvia drifted into unconsciousness. Xenophia watched with growing frustration as her companions rubbed their eyes sleepily. They were supposed to be her equals, legendary sorcerers whose magical powers allowed them to transcend human limitations. Yet she owned zombies who looked more energetic and alert. The party had woken up more than an hour ago, and, in her mind, planning their route shouldn't have taken 10 minutes. "The snow is still falling," Clement said, giving a yawn. "It must be at least 2 feet deep." "We'll push through," Xenophia said, silently vowing to attack the next person who yawned. "My concern is our path. Based upon Darian's description, we have 3 options available. We can take the Queen's Road to the east and enter the Bloodfang Mountains from the south." "No good," Lillian said. "The east is open plains. We'll be sitting ducks. Besides, there are no good entry points from the south except through Buried Grove." "Unburied Grove," Darian corrected her. "Whatever," she said. "We lose almost 2 days going that way."
"The smoothest pass is from the north," Xenophia continued. "We can keep to the forest until we come across the Blackguard River. There are numerous roads running the expanse of the valley. We can keep to the edge until we reach the northern Bloodfangs and then move south." "Again, we lose too much time," Clement said. "The diversion to the Bloodguard requires at least an extra day of traveling. Entering the mountains from the north is easier, but we cannot afford to give up 2 or 3 days for the sake of smoother ground."
"That leaves the direct pass northeast," Darian said.
"Exactly," Xenophia confirmed. "We can head for Rydian's Pass. There are no roads, the terrain is wild, and the forest overgrown. Plus, we pass through the Shattered Canyon. Still, that's the most direct route."
"The Shattered Canyon and Rydian Pass are great places for an ambush," Darian observed.
"Let them try it," Xenophia said. "We're the 4 deadliest sorcerers of our generation. If I could feel pity, I'd feel it for anyone who gets in our way." "Well," Clement said, "what are we waiting for?"
Without further conversation, the company headed out the door. At first, the march moved at a fast pace, but the deep snow and thick forest steadily wore down the hardy travelers. Only Xenophia remained immune to the treacherous conditions. She strode ahead of the company, plowing through the knee-deep ice. She didn't really expect the others to keep pace. Despite her lanky appearance, she possessed supernatural physical strength and resiliency. Her years of constant necromantic experiments and magical enhancements altered her body to a level beyond the range of mere mortals. Indeed, she was more like her undead creations than a human being. She hardly smelled the refreshing scents of the surrounding spruces. She barely felt the chill of the freezing winter winds. When she ate and drank, she hardly tasted the flavors. She pondered the nature of her power as she walked. Was she losing herself? For years she had transformed her mind and body with the conviction that the changes were necessary to defeat Darian. Yet, not only did she fail to defeat Darian, she couldn't even defend her kingdom against Sylvia. The only thing her alterations achieved was the gradual loss of her humanity. She wondered if the true reason for her transformation wasn't simply because she was addicted to power. She glanced back at the company. Clement and Lillian trudged several yards behind, their heads bent low against the frosty winds. Behind them, Darien marched, his eyes locked upon Xanathia. She suspected he drew strength from visualizing her death. She longed to draw her dagger and thrust herself upon him, but only he knew the way to Genloris Keep. She needed him. She disliked the thought. Even more, she disliked knowing he didn't need her. None of them wanted her to come. She suspected they were keeping secrets from her, and they held all the cards. She could only tag along, hoping for a way to squeeze the truth from them. She glanced back at Darien. The wind was picking up. Large plumes of icy mist blew into his face, forcing him to lower his gaze. Xanathia shook her head. They didn't want her to gain Sylvia's powers, but she wasn't giving up on her plan to use the dagger. They would steal Sylvia's powers if they could. Xanathia wasn't to blame if they lacked the necessary skill. Her powers of concentration remained unequaled by any other mortal. She alone managed to successfully cast the absorption spell, perhaps the only person in the modern age to achieve the feat. She deserved the essence she stole, or so she told herself. Again, Xanathia wondered if she was merely addicted to power. Her thoughts drifted like snowflakes across the expanse of her mind as she continued onward through the endless trees and snow.